I'm pleased to welcome bassist, composer, and innovator Michael Manring to the first episode of Shambhu Sessions Season 2. Michael is widely recognized as one of the world's leading and influential solo bassists. Over many decades, he has expanded and innovated on the instrument's melodic, harmonic, and expressive possibilities. A student of legendary bassist Jaco Pastorius, Michael has honed his sound through thousands of recordings and performances with artists like guitar legend Michael Hedges, keyboardist Susan Ciani, and many others. Many of us discovered his work through the Windham Hill recordings of the 80s and 90s, including his work with Hedges and his long creative relationship with producer Will Ackerman. Michael has earned Grammy and BAMI nominations. He's a distinguished Berkeley School of Music alumni, and the Philadelphia Inquirer called him, quote, the hottest bassist today. And I can second that because I had the privilege of working with Michael on my first album, Sacred Love, as well as on my third album, Soothe. We also performed together a couple of times in California, and his work is featured on my recent Dolby Atmos compilation, Transcendence. I captured some of that work on YouTube, and I'll post video links in the podcast description. Today we'll explore Michael's journey, his innovations, his approach to collaboration, and the deeper listening that runs through all of his music. It's an honor to welcome my friend, the great Michael Manring.
Thank you, brother. That was a very nice introduction. I'm not sure I deserve it all, but I really appreciate it in any case.
Well, I think you do. How are you and where are you?
I'm doing great. Everything is good. I'm at home in Oakland, California, and it's nice to be here. It's a beautiful day here, so it's especially nice to be here.
Good. Well, I'm in San Diego right now, so we're both on the West Coast.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of start with your early life. Growing up, what kind of music were you listening to, and which bassists and artists kind of shaped your early approach to music?
We had a lot of music in my house when I was growing up. My parents were music fans, and so it was a pretty wide range of stuff. They played some Broadway show tunes. They played a lot of classical music in the house, Beethoven, Chopin. I remember hearing that stuff a lot. And a lot of the pop music of the time, a lot of Kingston Trio was played in the house. But the whole family was crazy for the Monkees. So we always watched the Monkees. What was that, Saturday morning? Was that when they were on?
I think they were on during the week on like a Tuesday night or something. I watched it too, trust me.
Yeah, I can't remember when it was, but we would all gather around the TV and pay homage. And we loved the Beatles. And, it was kind of an interesting time musically. Also very big at that time was the Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
Right.
So there was all this kind of stuff floating around when I was a little kid. We had a piano in the house that I loved. And I have a picture someplace of myself playing the piano and reaching as far as I could reach to try to hit the sustain pedal. And I would love to just goof around on the piano whenever I got the chance. So that was how things started. My parents noticed that I had a real interest in music, and I talked about music a lot. And so they signed me up for piano lessons. They waited until I was 9, which was kind of too bad they waited that long. But it was nice that they did it then. They, in spite of the fact they loved music, they also thought it was a little bit of a sort of irresponsible thing to do, to pursue music too seriously.
As a career.
Certainly as a career. That was a hard sell. That was a hard sell my whole life. That was a hard sell. And, they're okay with being involved in music and they like the discipline of it. But they kind of felt like it was, I think irresponsible is what that best describes the way they felt about being too serious about music.
And when did you kind of move from piano to bass? How'd that happen?
Well, I always loved the sound of the bass, but this was the 60s, so we didn't have much information about music. And I was hearing the bass and singing bass lines. Kind of funny because my dad used to sing bass lines. He also listened to a lot of John Philip Sousa, which he loved. And he would always sing along and always the bass part. I remember him sitting me down once in front of it's Glenn Miller, Little Brown Jug. And, it starts with the bass line, boom, 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 boom. And him just saying, you got to listen to this. That's so amazing. And so it's always in my ear. And with the electric bass, especially, that really captured my imagination. But I had no idea what it was. Had no idea. But fortunately, after a while, the information kind of started being more available. And I figured out that it was a bass guitar was the thing that I loved so much. And I begged my parents to let me buy one. And they said no. They were afraid it would lead to me becoming a hippie. So that was unacceptable. But I kept begging, and finally they relented. And I got my first bass guitar. I think it was right around my 10th, when I was around 10, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, I loved it. Just loved it right away. I was not a person who started on guitar and then went over to bass. That was not my path. I was just, the bass that was my baby from the get-go.
Were you playing in groups in high school and middle school?
Oh man, every group that would have me, I would do. I just loved it all and played, in any kind of situation I could manage to weasel myself into. I was lucky in high school. We had a very good band program. And by the time I got to high school, I was, it was less of an interest and more of an obsession. I was just completely obsessed with music. And fortunately, the band program was great. I played in all the bands in high school. They even allowed me to compose for the bands. And so I spent a lot of time in high school writing out music, which I did in a clandestine manner for most of my classes. But one of my teachers saw me doing this, and I thought, oh boy, now I'm in trouble. And she said instead, this is awesome. You can do this anytime you want. You don't have to do schoolwork. So a few people were supportive that way. But it was a great experience to write for these different instruments. Every year in the springtime, the school would produce a musical, and we typically did something like The Music Man or Bye Bye Birdie or something like that. And I was sure that what we needed to do was something avant-garde and forward-thinking. So I started writing an opera. Foolishly, I was a little bit surprised when they had no interest in staging my opera, so I never finished it. It was called No Motor and had no plot and very little.
Sounds like a Frank Zappa project.
It was kind of Frank Zappa-ish, although I didn't know that much about Frank Zappa then. So it was inspired. It was very inspired by Thelonious Monk, Thad Jones stuff I was listening to.
Wow, great.
Stravinsky. Philip Glass had just recently premiered Einstein on the Beach, and there was no recording of it, but there were a lot of descriptions of it and a lot of pictures you could see. And so I was trying to imagine what that sounded like and wanted to make something like that, that was just weird and avant-garde.
Wow. I love your influences. I listened to a lot of the same types of music in high school, and I was also arranging and writing too. How did you kind of find yourself at Berkeley School of Music?
Well, when I finished high school, there was nothing else I was interested in at all, honestly, but music. I was playing the upright bass as well as electric bass, but I was never really that good at the upright bass. And so I didn't think I could get into a conservatory. And if I could, it wouldn't be that much fun because I just was never really that good at the instrument. And I was really passionate about the electric bass. So the only places I knew of, and I think the only places you could study electric bass when I graduated high school were North Texas State or Berkeley School of Music in Boston. And Berkeley was closer, so I applied and got in and went there right after high school.
That's amazing. And at Berkeley, I mean, were you playing more traditionally, or were you starting to kind of explore the potential on that instrument?
Mostly I was doing that kind of stuff on my own, just because it was not sounding very good. It was something I was hopeful for, but mostly I was just soaking up everything that they had to offer there. And so playing a lot of bebop and playing a lot of fusion, mostly at Berkeley. It was a great experience on many levels. They had, I think they still have, the whole bottom floor is practice rooms that you could just reserve anytime you wanted. And so on anytime I wasn't in class, I was in the practice rooms, jamming with somebody, playing real book tunes or playing somebody's own tunes or trying to, just do free improv or all kinds of things like that. And so I got to play with so many different musicians, until my fingers were just covered in blisters. And so that was good. It was also good because they had such a really good harmony program and just kind of general music program. It was super practical, super useful, so that it really set you up to be able to be a professional musician. That was great. It was a difficult time for me personally. I've always been kind of an odd duck, and so I spent a lot of my life kind of feeling like a weirdo. So that was difficult. But in terms of what the school had to offer, it was really good. I played when I was at Berkeley. I played in those days, the big bands, a few big bands were still in operation, and at Berkeley they had kind of preparatory bands for those, so that those bands were kind of on the road sometimes all the time. And so if somebody left, they needed a replacement right away. And those bands, if you were in one of those bands, you knew all the material, you knew what everything was like, and you were ready to go. I played in the Buddy Rich one. So I was on deck to replace the Buddy Rich's bass player if he ever decided he wanted to go. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Had you discovered Jaco by that time?
Yes. I first heard Jaco Pastorius on the first recording I heard him on was Pat Metheny's first album, Bright Size Life. I remember a friend had bought that album, and we kind of had
another Berkeley alumni.
Yeah, that's right. We had a kind of, I don't know what to call it, it's kind of a ceremonial listening. We used to do that a lot when we were kids. We'd get a really important record and all sit and listen to it, and it was like a bomb going off. It just was like, wow. And then shortly after, Jaco's solo album came out, and just became a source of study for years after that.
When did you actually study with him?
I studied with him in New York in around 82, 83, in that time period.
Got it.
He was living there a lot of the time in those days.
That was like 4 or 5 years after college.
Yeah. After I only stayed at Berkeley for one academic year on the advice of the teachers at the time. I'm sure this wasn't the official line of the school, but kind of to a person, the teachers told you, get out of here and start, playing music as soon as you can. Get into the pro world as soon as you can. And so I followed their advice. I'm kind of always sorry that I did on the level that I really love learning about music, and I wanted to study a lot more. But that seemed like that was the right thing to do. So just as we finished our final exams for the first year at Berkeley, I went off on the road with a top 40 band playing disco music. And we lived on the road, that band, and just played 6 nights a week, about 4 sets, 6 nights a week.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And from there, how did you find your way to Windham Hill Records?
Yeah, I didn't last that long with the disco band.
I would bet.
It was fun, and I loved it. The thing that was hardest for me about it is it was hard to have practice time, because we were playing for 6 hours a night. So it's pretty kind of exhausting. And I wanted to practice, for quite a few hours every day. And it was really hard to do that. So I didn't feel like I was making progress. And I didn't really feel that maybe disco bass player was my career path. So yeah, I lasted maybe 9 months or something like that, just living on the road with the band, going around we played mostly at hotels, and we'd play at their, at the disco they had in the hotel ballroom. That was what we did a lot. And so I went back to my parents' house in DC, and right away fell into a a really great band that was in DC at the time. We were a full-time professional band playing original fusion music, which was, I mean, that was just, it was the greatest. It was just awesome. You could do that then. And we played about 3 nights a week. We would do our original fusion music just in that Baltimore, Washington area, and a little bit on the road as well. And that was great. And during that period, I met Michael Hedges. I was also doing some gigs on the side, and one of those was with a mutual friend of ours named Lon Ephraim. We were playing kind of a fun gig, actually. It was a place where we played dinner music during the dinner hour. So Girl from Ipanema, you know, All the Things You Are, some classic standards. Exactly, which was fun. But then after dinner, we could play whatever we wanted. And that was really fun. So then we kind of stretched out and did more jazzy kinds of things. And the leader, Lon, said that I could play some of my solo bass music that I was working on at the time. And so I got to play some of my solo bass pieces. And Michael Hedges was there and heard me playing these pieces on the solo bass and was very interested in that, and asked me if I would play on his demo that he was working on for Windham Hill Records at the time. And so I got to play on that. And
was that Breakfast in the Field, that album?
Indeed.
81.
About a year later, I flew out to California to play on the record.
Yeah, I was listening to that today. Tunes like The Funky Avocado.
Yeah.
Baby Toes, 2 Days Old, Lenono.
Yeah. I just love that record. Just really beautiful stuff. It was before Michael really kind of solidified his style. But that was fun because it was really cool to watch him develop it as he went and to see all the different processes he went to. We became really close friends right away. That first night we met, we started talking about kind of like you and I have, all the music we liked, whether it was, you know, Sly and the Family Stone and Van Halen or Anton Webern and Stravinsky. And we're both big fans of a composer named Georgi Ligeti and Bartók, and we were just really interested in, you know, putting all this stuff together in some way. And he really did it. He really managed to.
Well, he was also conservatory trained like you.
He was. When we met, he was still at Peabody Conservatory.
Yeah, and he had a lot in common.
He had been there for a while, so he knew quite a lot about music. And we just became super close friends, and that was really our relationship was always kind of friends first. We loved playing together, but that wasn't like that wasn't, you know, necessarily the dream we all had. But we just enjoyed each other, our company so much that, you know, that was the basis of things.
You were buds.
We were buds. We kind of saw the world in the same way, and we were both, you know, largely because of that, we were both kind of weirdos. People kind of avoided us.
Over time, you played on 4 albums with him, right? Or 5 or 6?
I can't remember how many. I played on all of his records, solo records, except one, I think.
In the 80s, like there were 4 in the 80s and then 2 in the 90s.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
I would imagine playing with him live, because he was so expansive and pushing the envelope, that you just started to push your own envelope. Tell me about that.
Yeah, he was just amazing, just a force of nature. I think he was the best performer I've ever seen. He could just captivate a huge audience with just his guitar. I could never be like that. I could never be a performer like that. I tried to learn, but that was not in the cards for me. So that was a thrill. He loved to take huge chances playing, just really big chances, and that was thrilling. You know, he would just go off in this different direction, you know, anytime he felt like it, and he knew that I would go there with him. So I think that was a lot of the fun of it.
And with him, your bass was often like a second voice versus kind of a foundation.
Yeah, as I say, we didn't necessarily conceive of being involved in each other's music as much as we just were friends. And his music was very complete. So he did not need somebody to play a bass line. It was nice to reinforce the bass line sometimes. But we kind of were looking for this conception that where the bass was kind of moving in these different directions. Sometimes it was providing a counter melody or playing the melody or harmonizing the voice or just different kinds of things the bass could do within that context. And it's so fun and so easy because the music he made was so complete that, it was just super easy to play with him.
Was your approach to his songs evolving concert by concert, and then you finally kind of hit the spot on these songs, or was it kind of complete from the first take of a song?
That's a good question. It did evolve. When we first started playing together, it was just, we were so full of crazy ideas that it wasn't, all that well organized. And we got better at that. As I say, he was a very deep listener. And so we would work really hard on stuff and just really love honing in on every little detail. And that was a great experience. But it always had to be fun.
So this idea of you collaborating with artists, that's a big part of your musical life. How do you kind of approach collaborating with a new artist, whether you're doing live performances now or when you take a song that Will Ackerman might have produced and says, okay, add your bass part to this? How do you approach it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I always feel so honored that people want me to play on their music. I didn't really think I would be a session musician. I still don't really feel like a session musician. But I so appreciate being asked to participate in somebody's creativity. And it's always interesting. I mean, the process is always, the first thing I do is always sit down and think about, what is this music saying? Where's it coming from? How can I fit into that? How can I support the message? And often I'm not quite sure what the best approach will be. So I'll give somebody 3 or 4 different approaches and let them kind of guide what they think is the best way to do something. But I still, to this day, I learned so much. I'm always working on somebody's record. It's kind of all the time. And every time I learned something really, really interesting.
When I saw you in action way back in 2010, I came over to your place, brought this song called Imagine that Will had composed, and I added, my own guitar to it, and it became a co-composition. But I was kind of watching you for the first time, and you just sort of listened, and just started jamming with it, and listening back to things. And I didn't really get in the way of it because I really respected you as an artist, and I thought, wow, this will be great to get this guy's artistic flow onto this record, and it ended up coming out so beautifully.
Well, thank you, Shambhu. I mean, it was a beautiful work that you guys did, so that always makes it easy. And when people will let me, I'll get super microscopic about it and just really, do 100 takes of, 1 bar of music. I enjoy doing that just because, I learn from it. But I always make sure to do something more spontaneous as well in case, they don't want that super detailed approach. So it's fun. There's a lot of different ways to make music, and I enjoy doing all of them.
Love that. Let's just jump into a little bit of innovation. There was a bass created for you, the Zon Hyperbass. When was that created, and how did that come about?
Kind of saw the bass as a young instrument, which it is, and something that could evolve. I guess a lot of people don't feel this way about it, but it always seemed like it was, it was kind of finding its place in the world. And there was a lot of different things could happen. When I was a kid, there was always somebody who was coming up with some crazy new design for a bass or an amplifier or something. I really loved that about the instrument. And over the years, I kind of developed some thoughts about things that I wanted to try for a bass design. Occasionally I would talk to a luthier about these ideas, and most of them would run away screaming. But then in the late 80s, Joe Zahn was kind of following me around and coming to a lot of my shows. And he said, I really want to build you a bass. And I was kind of like, I I don't think you want to make a bass for me. You know, I kind of had bad experiences with this process. And he was very persistent. And I said, okay, all right, here's what I really want. And I described what became the Hyperbass, as you said. And he said, oh, yeah, we could do that. And I sometimes wonder if he regretted being so willing. But yeah, we started working on it right around 1990, sometime around then. And it was a hard process because we were really trying to reach for the moon. There's a number of unusual qualities it has that really had to, things had to be rethought. My part was easy. My part was it'd be super cool if we had this, and he had to go and figure out how it could actually be implemented.
So some of those innovations are tuning changes in real time.
Yeah, the bass guitar is so stable. You can just tune it to anything. I mean, you're going to break a string before you do any damage to the instrument. And even breaking a string on a bass is pretty rare. So you can tune it over this insanely wide range. I mean, you guys know all about that with guitar, all the stuff you can do. I think with bass, you could, in terms of each string, you could probably tune it over a wider range just because it's just so solid, the instrument. And I was really into this process. Of course, after meeting Michael Hedges, I got even more into tuning the bass weird and thought, I really should have an instrument where I can change tunings while I'm playing, because I'm sure the bass could handle it, because I was doing a lot of that by hand anyway. Really figured the bass could handle it. And I really wanted to see how far we could go with this sort of dynamic tuning possibilities. We decided we'd try to make the bass with live dynamic tuning on both ends, at the headstock and at the bridge. And Joe figured out how to do this. And so the instrument can be retuned instantly on the fly at both ends. He's so skilled. He's such a genius that everything worked perfectly. There's, almost no bumps in that road at all. And ever since, I've been having a blast with just experimenting with all the different things you can move through. And one of the nice happy accidents about it was I realized I like the sound of this tunings changing. That was something I really, as a composer, really appealed to me as a tone color. I just, wow, that's a sound you don't hear very often in music. Maybe with steel guitar, maybe a few other things, but I just thought that's really fun to work with, that sound. So it really has become that part of it's really become a big part of what I do and how I conceive of music. It's really fun.
And that's fretless. Were you always playing fretless, or was that the beginning of your fretless phase?
I started playing fretless as soon as I heard Jaco. When I heard Jaco, I was playing a lot of upright bass and a lot of electric bass. And one of the things that he did is he seemed to kind of bridge the gap and in a way kind of the best of both worlds. It was really impressive. There's a famous story about when Joe Zawinul first heard Jaco play. Jaco played him a recording and he turned to Jaco and said, "Do you also play electric bass?" Because he assumed what he was hearing was acoustic bass. So for me, that was a really important thing where there was this kind of single instrument that really bridged a lot of the best of both worlds. So I dedicated myself pretty seriously to the fretless bass for many years. But the fretted bass is a lot of fun too, so I couldn't give it up, and I still play both.
So the Zon had the tuning changes capability. It was fretless. It had an extended range too, right?
We were thinking about a number of things, and one of the things we thought is, why should the fingerboard end at any place other than as high as it could possibly go? We didn't know what would happen, when we extended the fingerboard. It's ended up being really a cool thing, and I want all my instruments like that now. But it's a fingerboard. The fingerboard's about the same length relatively as an upright bass, where the fingerboard is really long. And it's just handy to have that extra range. It wasn't so much a desire to play things in the stratosphere as it was, why wouldn't we do this?
So once you had this, the extended range, the tuning opportunities, I would imagine your writing really kind of went into a more galactic level.
I mean, it really, yeah. This was a big deal for me compositionally. Sometimes I like to read about the development of keyboard instruments from the Baroque era to the Romantic era, and all the innovations that took place and how that inspired people. And I like to think of myself as following in their footsteps, although not not quite at their level.
What's cool about you is that a lot of people get hung up on technology and they lose the soul of the music. But for you, you kind of fuse technology and the music really well, where you use it to kind of advance your inner exploration of what music can be.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, for me, that's one of the big challenges is we're living in this era when technology is taking over everything. Yeah, we either have to figure out how to allow us to make our lives better, or we have to become slaves to it. And in the musical realm, there's a place where you can really experiment with that a lot. So for me, it's a passion of, how do I use this technology to expand the creative process rather than it telling me what it wants to do. And
Yeah.
it is thrilling because the technology that's available now is kind of beyond our wildest dreams when we were kids.
Yeah. So let's talk about your solo work. You have 10 solo albums that you recorded since your 1987 debut on Windham Hill called Unusual Weather, which you co-produced with Bob Reed, right?
That's right. Well, I think
And
Bobby really produced it.
he
I
produced
mean,
it.
he's just such a great producer. I just really learned so much from him.
Love that. And then lots of ensemble pieces in there with more traditional bass. And then you've got Michael Hedges appearing on the song Man Thing, which became your website URL.
That's right. It's been my nickname since I was a kid, after the comic book character. I was such a weirdo. They thought that was an appropriate sobriquet for me.
Tell me about making that first album. That must have been a big deal for you.
It was, that's definitely the most reactionary record I ever made because I didn't want to make a bass player record. I didn't want to make a record that said, here's me doing this cool thing on the bass. Here's me doing this cool thing on the bass. I always kind of felt more like a composer than a bass player. If you twisted my arm, I would say that. I prefer not to make a distinction between the two, but yeah, composing was really the thing. And I kind of wanted to make a sound to kind of have an approach. So on purpose, I didn't have any blowing, like jazz soloing on it. I didn't have any slapping on it. I didn't have any funk grooves. I didn't have any what are called hip chord changes. I just wanted to break away from all that and nothing. I didn't want anything to be like funky on it and, really something different. And to just kind of create this sound that was, I guess, pastoral. Some people described it as more pastoral. I guess that works. It's always hard to come up with words about music.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really extraordinary opportunity. It was a handful. I had way bigger dreams than I had ability to pull it off. So it was hard work. But I sure learned a lot.
Was that Will who said, "Hey, let's do an album"?
Yeah, I'd been doing a lot of studio work for Windham Hill. And he always said, when you have music, you send it to me and maybe we'll do a record. And when I started working with Bobby Reed, we were doing stuff that really I thought that he might like. And I sent him some stuff and he said, oh yeah, we got to do a record. But it was really working with Bobby that really pulled it all together.
Love that. And then your album Soliloquy in 2005, you recorded that live.
Yeah, I recorded everything in my home studio, but I didn't do any overdubs or editing or anything. I just did everything, one take. Well, I would often do, 70 takes or something and pick the best one, but I didn't do any studio trickery. I wanted to represent the real sound of playing bass as a solo instrument, because one of my passions has always been, I always felt the instrument really sounds nice. It can really make a nice sound just all by itself. I know a lot of people don't feel that way, and that's totally fine. But I just always thought that was something that I wanted to hear, and wasn't really hearing it so much other places. So soliloquy was really a chance to just do that for a whole record, and see what happened.
The song Celine, a beautiful ballad. It's got your tuning changes. It's got a beautiful melody. It's got these unique harmonic tonalities that you kind of put together and play with. Was that song and others, were they pre-written, or did you create some of these live?
No, everything. Well, no, most of the pieces were, pretty composy, and there's a handful of pieces that are totally just turn on the tape and let it roll and see what happens. I like both approaches, from extremely thought through to just completely spontaneous, and everything in between. So I like going back and forth between the two. Selena is really it's pretty composy. I don't improvise a lot on that one. And that was the first piece I wrote on the Hyperbass when I got it. In fact, I was writing it as we were building the bass, just kind of writing it in my mind and knowing, okay, it's going to be able to do this, so I'm going to write this. And it was mostly done by the time the instrument was finished.
And then your last solo album in 2020 was Small Moments. You've been using the EBow forever. We could talk about that, but I loved the song "The World Is Everything That Is the Case." The use of the EBow, the beautiful layered harmonies in the song "Tetrahedron." You can hear Jaco's influence.
Thank you.
Unique tunings, the harmonic structures, like everything in your toolbox is inside those songs. Tell me about your approach to writing and recording your own songs.
I just really love composing. I've composed music as long as I can remember. My earliest memories are just humming melodies in my head and putting two different songs together that were on the radio and trying to mash them together. There's a word for that. I can't remember what you call that, but doing that. And I've just always loved it. And I love to get very intense about composing. There's a piece on Small Moments that I worked on for probably like 7 years. I worked on it, and it's not an especially good composition. I just wanted to get it right. I knew what I wanted to say, and needed to find exactly the right colors for each section. And so it took a really long time to put it together, but I enjoy that. I enjoy that process.
Love that. So let's talk about a little bit about present day. You're working with a lot of new artists. Every time I turn my head, you're out there touring in Europe, you're here, there, and you have a lot of collaborations in the last 5 years with different artists. What kind of excites you about working with new artists today? I'm sure these are people that have been listening to you forever, so they're like flipped out that they can be recording and performing with you.
I kind of always feel like it's my honor to get to play with people again. When someone wants you to help to put their creativity out into the world, that's it's a big responsibility and really an extraordinary honor, but also a heck of a lot of fun. So I keep being thrilled that people ask me to do this. As you say, I'm working with an awful lot of different people and enjoy all of it. Genre-wise, it's kind of all over the map. I generally avoid the mainstream of the music business, and it returns the favor. So that usually works out pretty well. But I do an awful lot of stuff that's off the beaten track. And
any favorites of your more recent collaborations that you want to chat about?
Hard to say. We've just started playing in a trio, myself and drummer Scott Amendola and the great bassoon player Paul Hansen. And we've had a lot of interest in that trio, and these are heavy hitter musicians, so we can go anywhere with that group. We've been having a lot of fun with that. I'm not sure where we'll go with it.
Are they based in the U.S.?
Yeah, everybody's here in the Bay Area.
Oh, how cool is that?
But just really amazing musicians. They've done amazing things and just can play anything. And so that trio is a lot of fun. but they're all fun. There's a trio I play in with a guitarist named Tony Kaltenberg. That's we have a percussionist, and it's kind of more of the kind of Windham Hill general area of music, and that's really fun. I mean, I enjoy all of it. Working with Henry Kaiser is always a blast, doing avant-garde music. So I enjoy all of it. It's hard to say what's my favorite.
How do you kind of define growth at this stage of your life? And then have you discovered everything that bass can do, or are you still finding new things?
I haven't even begun to scratch the surface. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, there's just so much to do. I feel a little embarrassed at how little I've been able to do, honestly, because there's so much. There's so much to do. But that's okay, because I think if I had to choose of, kind of being at the end of a long process or the beginning of a long process, I think I'd rather be at the beginning. When you hear a great concert pianist who's just a huge lineage of they're at the end of, that's amazing. But it's kind of more fun to be at the bleeding edge of the beginning of it, where we're just trying to figure out what can happen. And there's so much. I mean, there's just so much. It's just thrilling. I mean, I think this might be the time of greatest musical possibility in history.
That's
I don't
true.
know for sure, but it's really amazing.
Well, you have left a huge musical legacy as a bassist, and I know that bass players around the world see you as one of the true greats. How would you define your legacy?
I'm not very interested in my legacy. However, I'd be fine with being totally forgotten. That'd be fine.
I'm not sure that's going to happen.
No, that'd be fine. People will value what they value in the future, and if they value what I did, that's fine. Or if not, that's fine too. For me, I've been kind of on this mission, and that's where my focus is: taking care of my family and trying to do this music that I dream of. That's what I want to do in life, and whatever happens after that is fine. Hopefully people won't despise everything I ever did.
Is there a new solo project on the way?
Yes. Yes, the next thing is I have finished a band album. Yeah, called Subtext. With two really good friends, Chris Garcia and Craig Ochikubu from LA. And we all contributed compositions, and it's basically fusion stuff. I was kind of hoping to delve more into the tech metal side of things, but it ended up being more fusiony, so that's fine. But that should be out soon on Cleopatra Records. But the next one I'm working on now, will be, I think I'll do it completely by myself, but not solo bass. It'll have a lot of other instruments in it. And I've been doing a lot of music that for me is kind of, well, you know this better than I, that music has this wonderful ability to kind of be healing, I'm not sure that's the right word, to just to make you feel better. And
Healing is a good word.
Is that a good word?
Yeah, I think it's fair.
And I feel like I want to do that. I feel like
I've always kind of felt that, music is like a special gift of God or wherever it comes from. And, music can be used commercially, it can be used for entertainment, or it can be used for upliftment. And
absolutely.
I've always preferred the upliftment side. I mean, it's the only reason that motivated me to do music in the beginning. For me to do music to make money or to become known, none of that motivated me. But when I thought, wow, you could make music that would uplift people and they would feel better inside, I thought, I can get behind that.
This is what I love about you and your music. I mean, I feel like that's so important now. When you think about it, it's interesting. The more academically I've studied music, and I'm still studying, still have a teacher. I'm still studying music theory and intonation, especially. The more I've done, of that part of it, the more I believe just what you said, that it's just this music is like this miracle gift from the heavens. And in human society, in the long arc of human society, every culture has had music, and it's always been the most used in the most spiritual, most uplifting aspects of life. So that's kind of really what music is. And this idea that it's a commercial entity is really new. It's not really even 100 years old, that idea. And it's cool. It's really cool that music can make so much money. But I don't want us to lose this other part of it that really is, it's hard to find the words for it, but there's a little bit more about the soul. Soulfulness. Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, I think you've hung on to that. And I think, the magic that you add to these various projects, and including your own, is the soulfulness that is really underlying all of the technical brilliance and innovation that you bring to the music. I mean, like you said earlier, you know music theory. You're not acting in a vacuum. You kind of know why things sound the way they sound.
Thank you. That's very kind. And you're right. I really want to know. I want to get as far deep into it as I can. I want to know why and how it works and all that. I mean, it's really fascinating when you get really to what appears to be the bedrock level. I mean, it's really extraordinary what's happening. I don't think we understand all that much about it, but it's kind of amazing, kind of almost supernatural in a way, how music works.
Like you.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I am just a humble practitioner, trying to do my little part in it.
Well, hey, is there anything I've kind of missed in your story or your up and coming work that you want to share?
Well, thank you. No, I don't think so. Just, for me, it's always been about feeling lucky to be taking part in this process. And I'm super appreciative of the people who've allowed me to be a professional musician all these years. I've never had another job. So I feel super grateful that that's the case. And so when anybody wants to support me, that's always deeply appreciated. My website is a good place to keep track of me, as is social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and even Twitter, although I'm not very good at Twitter. So
Yeah, you
you
have a
can
lot of
keep
great
track
stuff
of me.
on TikTok.
Well, thank you. I'm working on it. Working on it. I enjoy the process of sharing this stuff. I'm not very social media savvy, but it's really cool to be able to share music that way.
Amazing. Well, my thanks to you, my friend. My thanks to Michael Manring for joining me today. And you can learn more about Michael and his music at his website, manthing.com. And I'll add that link to the podcast description, along with some of his social media sites. And if this episode moved you, please like, follow, and share Shambhu Sessions wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Shambhu, and until next time, stay open, stay inspired, and keep listening.